Hey guys, tonight we slip our feet into worn sandals, the kind crusted with desert dust and sea mist, and follow a figure across moonlit hillsides and into swaying boats that seem far too fragile for the storms ahead. You're not sure where he's going yet, but something in you can't look away. The air is sticky, the smell of fish and firewood clings to the night. The Sea of Galilee isn't calm, it's raging. Waves slap the boat like a toddler having a tantrum, and you're soaked, wide-eyed, gripping the edge so tight your knuckles go bone white. You shout for help over the wind, and your voice is just one of many, grown men crying like boys. Then he stands up, not with a magic wand, not with lightning, but with words. Peace, be still. You almost laugh, it's too absurd. Talking to weather? But then the wind listens. The sea folds itself into glass, and all the noise in your head, panic, guilt, that one embarrassing thing you said in 8th grade, goes quiet too, just for a breath. You stare at him. He's calm, drenched, looking like someone who already knows tomorrow's headlines. You're terrified, not of the storm anymore, but of him. Not because he yelled louder than the wind, but because he didn't yell at all. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle behind the teacher as he climbs the rocky slope. Stones shift underfoot. Thorns snag your robe. You're not sure if you're following a carpenter or a rebel or a ghost, but something in your chest tightens when he touches the sick, when he pauses mid-sermon to notice a child no one else saw. You meet people along the way, ordinary, unimpressive, and frankly, a little irritating. James always walks too fast. Peter interrupts everyone. Judas counts things in whispers, but none of them are very different from your coworkers or your cousin with the multi-level marketing scheme. They're just human, messy. So are you. And then there's Thomas. Poor guy gets remembered for doubting, but honestly, he's the only one brave enough to say what you're thinking. Unless I see the scars, I won't believe it. Admit it, you've said worse in traffic. Historians still argue whether Jesus actually walked on water or if it was a symbolic retelling of his command over chaos. You weren't there. But the way your own anxiety stills when you whisper his name in the dark, that feels pretty real. There's a quirky tale buried in old commentaries, one that says Peter didn't just sink because he doubted, but because he looked back at the boat. Isn't that so you? Asking for faith but glancing back at the comfort zone, just to check if it's still there in case Jesus doesn't pan out. You camp by a fire one night, stars pin-pricked across the sky, and he tells a story about sheep. You laugh. Sheep are dumb, and you know it, but he talks like he'd risk everything to find one that's wandered off. The others fall asleep. You stay up, wondering if maybe you're the one he meant. The heat of the fire kisses your cheeks. Your hands are calloused now, your heart a little tougher than when you started. The teacher never rushes. You do, but he doesn't. And one morning you wake up to find him gone ahead, again. He's already at the well, already feeding people, already washing feet that don't deserve it. You still don't get him. You never will. But you keep walking, because even if you don't understand the plan, you trust the person. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. You wake with sand in your teeth in the taste of silence, the kind that stretches like desert plains, flat, hot, and seemingly endless. You squint at the horizon and there's nothing but heat mirages dancing like liars. The teacher is ahead, still walking. You follow, but your feet drag now. The wilderness is different than the storm. Storms are loud, dramatic, Instagrammable, I assume. But this is slow, monotonous erosion. It's the drip of unanswered prayers, of showing up every Sunday and still feeling hollow by Thursday. It's being kind to people who never notice. It's forgiving that one person again and again. You trudge beside Elijah now. He's not glowing. He's not even standing. He's curled up under a broom tree, begging God to let him die. Yep. the mighty prophet who called down fire from heaven, is basically praying for early retirement via lightning bolt. You sigh, relatable. Historians still argue whether Elijah's cave experience on Mount Horeb was literal or a literary construction meant to represent inner spiritual transformation. But when you feel like Gaz ghosted you and a whisper nudges your chest while folding laundry, that cave feels real enough. You press on, remembering the strange detail. God sends Elijah bread baked on hot stones. Not lightning, not lectures, just carbs and a nap. You chuckle, because if that's not divine parenting, what is? You pass others in this desert. A woman dragging a jar she can barely lift, whispering about living water. A tax collector with sand in his coin pouch and guilt in his throat. A teenager named Mary, still trying to make sense of angel speak. They're all stumbling forward, just like you, through seasons where God feels absent, but your schedule is very present. You get a sunburn where your hope used to be. You mutter prayers with no punctuation, no verbs, just sighs and half-hearted help. Still something moves, not fast, not flashy, but like roots curling slowly underground. You don't notice it until your hands, once clenched, are open, waiting. One night, under the starlight that feels too sharp for your exhaustion, you remember Moses. He wandered this wilderness too. 40 years of detours with a group that made group projects look sane. You wonder what it was like. Manna again? Still no Spotify? There's a fringe tradition that says Moses didn't die at all, but was simply taken like Enoch, slipping through the thin veil between dirt and divine. Scholars debate it, still, but you get the poetry of it. Some people vanish when their work is done. Some stay until even their sandals wear out. You kneel to adjust your own. Yours are cracked, fraying, but they've carried you this far. And then you hear him, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the low, ridiculous rustle of a breeze that smells faintly of baking bread and the laughter of a child just learning to walk. You look up, and the teacher is there, holding out water, not judging your pace, just smiling as if to say, I knew you'd make it. So you drink, and the dryness starts to loosen in your bones. You're on your feet again, barely, wobbling like a baby deer in borrowed armor. The teacher hasn't slowed down. If anything, he's picking up the pace. And now you're not just walking through deserts. You're heading into battlefields. Don't panic. It's not that kind of battle. No swords, no cavalry charges. Just Mondays, critics, imposter syndrome, temptations with perfect hair and very persuasive tone. The kind of battles where the enemy uses your own thoughts as weapons. So the teacher talks about armor, not chainmail or Roman gladius gear, but something weirder, a belt of truth, breastplate of righteousness, shoes for walking, not running away, a shield, helmet, sword, all invisible, all annoyingly metaphorical. Paul the Apostle wrote about it while stuck under Roman guard, probably watching soldiers oil their spears while he polished parables. Historians still argue whether Paul penned the armor of God metaphor during one of his earlier imprisonments or during his final Roman house arrest. Either way, the dude was brilliant and tired, probably a little hungry, and yet somehow still poetic. You glance down at yourself now. You're wearing shame like a backpack, comparison like a scarf, fear like a hoodie zipped to your throat. It's time to swap outfits. So you put on truth, not slogans or affirmations, but truth like, you are not the sum of your failures. You cinch that tight around your waist like a lifeline. Then righteousness, not yours because let's be real, you yelled at a barista today, but his righteousness offered like borrowed tux for a party you didn't think you'd be invited to. Your shoes? The gospel. Not high heels, not Crocs. Something rugged made for trudging through mud and rejection. The shield is faith, and it's dinged, scorched, and definitely secondhand. But it still blocks arrows labeled not good enough and you'll never change. You grip a sword, the word, not as a weapon to hurt others, but to slice through lies that settle like fog. You are loved. Swipe. You are chosen. Slash. You're not too late. Thrust. There's a quirky medieval sermon still floating in obscure Latin texts that likens the helmet of salvation to a cooking pot. because it protects what's inside from boiling over. Honestly, that tracks. Your brain is a spicy stew of doubt and drama most days. You move into the crowd of modern warriors. A single mom reciting psalms during her fourth night shift. A teenager standing alone at lunch, still choosing kindness. A man deleting his browser history and whispering, "Not today." These are the ones in full armor. You nod to them, they nod back. And still the enemy whispers, "You messed up too much. You're just pretending. This won't last." But you remember the teacher, again, how he never recruited perfect people. Peter was a hothead, Matthew a sellout, James and John, literal thunderboys. Even Paul, yes, brilliant Paul, used to arrest Christians before he became one. You could write a sitcom about early church drama. Scholars still debate whether the thorn in Paul's flesh was physical pain, mental illness, or just a really annoying church member. But Paul said it stayed so that grace could flex harder. And grace is the only part of the armor that doesn't make sense. You should be disqualified. And yet, here you are, suited up. Your battle isn't glamorous, it's not going viral. But somewhere in heaven, angels are probably slow clapping because you said no to gossip, yes to prayer, and maybe tomorrow to quitting. The teacher turns back, grins, and raises a brow like he's proud, like he always knew you had it in you. And you square your shoulders. Because today you're not walking alone. You're armored. You're moving forward. And your shield may be dented, but it's still raised. You're limping now. Not from battle wounds you can show off, but the quiet kind. The emotional bruises from being misunderstood, from hoping too hard, from telling God, "Okay, this time I'll really trust you," and then falling flat again. You end up in a courtyard. It's cool, with the scent of smoke and roasted fish in the air. There's someone there already, head bowed, fingers twitching nervously. You recognize him, Peter. The last time you saw him, he was talking big. Swords and loyalty, pledges and promises. Even if everyone else abandons you, I won't. Classic Peter, all heart, zero filter. But that was before the rooster. Historians still argue whether Peter's denial was recorded word for word or stylized for narrative emphasis. But the grief in his face, the collapse in his chest when the rooster crowed that third time, that feels painfully authentic. You sit beside him. Neither of you says much. Shame doesn't need subtitles. And then, footsteps. The teacher appears again. Post-crucifixion, post-burial, post-death, which is wild. Because you still haven't fully processed Good Friday, and here he is cooking fish like it's a Sunday picnic. Jesus doesn't say anything for a while, just flips the fish, lets the silence do its healing. Eventually he turns to Peter. "Do you love me?" Not, "Why did you mess up?" Not, "Do you remember what you did?" Not even, "Are you sorry?" Just a question that reaches past failure and grabs something deeper. 3 times, 3 chances, 3 quiet resurrections inside one man's soul. There's a fringe legend that Peter couldn't ever hear a rooster again without weeping, but still got up each time and kept walking. The sound, it didn't break him. It reminded him grace showed up anyway. You glance at your own life now, the denials you've whispered, the choices you swore you wouldn't repeat, the prayers you stopped praying because you figured he was done listening. But grace doesn't flinch. It doesn't blink at your browser history or the things you mutter under your breath when you stub your toe and the baby's crying and the Wi-Fi cuts out during a Zoom call. Grace is that annoying friend who shows up even when you ghosted her last week. You remember Paul's line again, where sin increased, grace increased all the more. That's not permission to wallow. It's a reminder that you're not holding this thing together. He is, even now, he looks at you with the same eyes that met Peter's across a smoky courtyard. No condemnation, just an invitation to come eat breakfast. You sigh, you wish forgiveness came with receipts, proof that you're back in good standing. But no, just trust, just grace, just him. You watch as Peter stands and dusts off his robe. He looks older, quieter, but stronger somehow. Like someone who's been to the bottom and found it wasn't as far down as he feared. There's this quirky debate among early theologians. Did Peter ever doubt again? Did he hesitate before speaking, knowing his past? The records don't say, but what they do show. He kept going. He became a voice, a rock, even when it got him jailed, beaten, humiliated. Grace didn't just restore him, it gave him purpose. You rise too. Your legs are still sore, your heart still full of holes, but you're fed, forgiven, and invited forward. The teacher walks beside you again, and for the first time in a long while, you're not afraid to be seen. You're staring at a mountain now, not metaphorically, a literal, obnoxious, sky-piercing wall of rock and dirt. Your feet ache just looking at it. The teacher's already halfway up. You whisper one of those honest prayers, short, breathy, and wildly unimpressive. Can you move it instead? Nothing happens, of course. You remember what he said once, something about mustard seeds and faith, that if you had just a speck, you could tell a mountain to throw itself into the sea. You tried it once, stared at your bills and whispered, "Yeet thyself," but the bank account disagreed. Historians still argue whether Jesus meant literal topography or was offering poetic encouragement. But most agree he was serious about the power of prayer. Small, wobbly, awkward prayer from people like you. So, instead of shouting at the mountain, you climb. It's not graceful. You slip a few times, get dust in places no dust should be. You pass others too, some sliding down, muttering, "Not worth it." A few camped halfway up, building tents of comfort out of distractions and low expectations. You reach a ridge and calm, not just from exertion, but awe. The view is ugly, beautiful, wild. Below you, case. Above you, peace. And still, the teacher climbs. There's this weird little story buried in Acts. Paul, preaching so long, some kid named Eutychus falls asleep, topples out a window, and dies. Paul runs down, raises him back to life, and then keeps preaching. You laugh out loud. God moves in resurrection, and Paul uses it as a coffee break. Classic. You remember now, the point isn't always to move the mountain. Sometimes it's to realize that the climb reshapes you more than the destination. You pass a woman on the trail, frail, old, singing softly. Her knees shake, but her face glows. She's been climbing longer than you've been alive. You ask how she's still hopeful. She grins. He never promised ease, just presence. You keep climbing, and sometimes the prayers echo. You ask for healing, but get silence. You pray for guidance, but receive delay. You beg for a breakthrough, but only get a trickle of peace, just enough for the next step. Fringe theologians call it the discipline of delay. That holy pause where God seems still, but is actually building endurance in your soul's muscles. It's like spiritual interval training. You stop at a bend where wildflowers grow between rocks. Beauty where it shouldn't be. Hope in the crevice. It's not flashy, but it's real. You start to recognize the rhythm of his presence now, not loud but loyal. Not flashy but faithful, like background music that doesn't impress at first, but becomes the only soundtrack that keeps you sane. And then one day, without realizing, you crest the mountain. It's not triumphant. There's no brass band, just wind and sky and the teacher beside you, already making a fire for breakfast. Because apparently resurrection isn't the only thing he does on repeat. He feeds too. You sit, you breathe. And the mountain? Still there, but it doesn't loom anymore. It feels conquered. Not because you moved it, but because it didn't move you. You're deep in a cave now, not the dramatic kind with glowing crystals and epic boss music. Just stone, damp, quiet. The kind of place where thoughts echo longer than prayers and silence wraps around your shoulders like a second skin. This isn't a punishment, it's a pause. A stillness you didn't ask for, but maybe needed. The teacher's here too, of course, sitting like he's got nowhere else to be. Like your silence doesn't scare him. Like your lack of words is still a kind of conversation. You settle in, there's no rush, no goals, no to-do list, just presence. His and yours. You remember Jonah? Yeah, the fish guy. He found himself in a cave of sorts, a fish belly, technically. Salt, seaweed, the kind of accommodations you don't see on Airbnb. He wasn't swallowed because he was evil, just stubborn. Like you, like me. Historians still argue whether Jonah's story is historical narrative or theological parable. Doesn't matter tonight. What matters is that he sat in the dark for 3 days, praying, processing, learning that sometimes the escape is the belly, not the shore. You inhale. There's something comforting about darkness when you stop trying to escape it. When you realize it's not evidence of absence, but a canvas for light. You spot fingerprints now, not literal, but metaphorical. Smudges of divine interference. That time the meeting didn't go your way, but led to a better door. That text from a friend just when you'd stopped hoping anyone saw you. That nudge to apply, to call, to speak up. Coincidences? Maybe, but not to your soul. There's an obscure desert father, Abba Macarius, who said, "In the cave, you learn the name of God is silence. You always thought he was thunder. Turns out he's also stillness. And this cave, it's not punishment, it's invitation." You think about Jesus again, post-resurrection, pre-ascension. For 40 days he just hung out. No miracles, no big sermons, just showing up, breaking bread and reminding people, "I'm still here." You blink and suddenly you're not afraid of the dark, because now you see it's not empty. It's full of him. You lay back. The cave hums, not with noise, but with peace. Outside, life is still messy. The inbox is still full. That conversation you're dreading still waits. But for now, you rest. The teacher reaches over and brushes dust from your shoulder like a mother would. You close your eyes. You're not lost. You're held. And now your breath begins to slow. The cave softens into a memory, not a prison. Your muscles, once coiled and ready to flee, now uncurl like pages in warm sunlight. You are safe here. The teacher sits still beside you, not rushed, not impatient, not measuring your progress by the mile, but by the moment. You realize you've traveled far, and yet the most important movement wasn't outward. It was inward. The storm passed, the desert stretched, the armor held. Grace came, the mountain stood, the cave whispered. And through it all, you never walked alone. Maybe tonight wasn't about fixing everything. Maybe it was just about remembering who holds everything, including you. Let your thoughts drift now. Let them swirl like dust in moonlight, unhurried and weightless. You're not being graded. You're not being watched for performance. You're being loved, quietly, deeply, eternally. As your body sinks into rest, let the truth settle in your chest. You are seen. You are known. You are still being written into a story that's older than time, but shaped uniquely for you. So release your grip on control, on fear, on the idea that you must always be okay and just breathe. Tomorrow will come. But for now, let the cave keep you. Let the silence sing over you. Let the teacher watch as you sleep, unafraid. Sweet dreams. Bottom of form, autumn of form.